This is Suit Up Sports.
Suit Up Sports.
Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with 10-year NFL vet Frank Garcia. Frank, how you doing?
I'm doing great, buddy. I know that it's been a little bit of a time between this one and the last one we did, but hope you're feeling better. I know that you've had some issues. You got your back fixed, and then the other side took over, and it's been a heck of a journey for you.
It has, man. I'll tell you what, the surgery worked on the leg that was killing me. No pain in that leg. And then now the other leg's killing me worse than the right leg did. And the doctor said that it's normal. And when they had to do what they did.
Is it normal to not be able to sleep because of the pain though?
Well,
I guess backs are tricky.
It is, and I also don't like taking that medicine. So part of it's me not taking all the medicine they give me. But even when I do take it, I haven't been sleeping. But I'm through season 6 of The Shield, which I've watched about 1,000 times. Yeah. But it's one of my favorite shows ever. And because I can't sleep, I just kind of post up in here and watch that. But let me tell you something I watched a lot of these last few days. That and by the way, Big D, good weekend this weekend. All right, we got Dylan. We got one word out of Dylan. We're gonna build. We're gonna build that
start.
up. Yeah,
that's a start.
When Dylan cooked at one of our favorite restaurants, McCoy's, for like 5 years while he was going through college, and the owner over there, Ryan Register, is a great dude, and he's got a great crew, and they love Dylan over there. But they used to always joke with me. He's like, "Yeah, we got like 5 words out of him today. He's the best and gallon guy we got back there. He gets the job done, and we can count on him. He's dependable." But And I said, well, normally, would you rather guys not talking all the time? Like, I used to hate when I worked in the kitchen. There was always that dude that wouldn't shut up. Yeah. I wanted to listen to music, get into my zone, because when you're busy, you're nonstop cooking, and I didn't want people back there yapping all the time.
Well, it's funny because he is your son, so you would expect him to have the personality that you have, but I can understand why he doesn't talk, because he doesn't get he can't get a word in edgewise with you talking.
That's probably true. That's probably true. But something I watched this weekend, which talks about talking, which will relate to talking too much, was the College Baseball World Series, which I know, you and I love that every year when it comes around. College baseball is so much fun to watch. And this tournament's great because you've got the regionals, double elimination, and then you move on, and then obviously to Omaha for the World Series. And I always love watching it, but I'll tell you something that got under my skin big time
in baseball,
in the College World Series this weekend. And I don't know if you saw it yet, but Coastal Carolina, which is a team that we both root for just because they're local. You've sent kids from where you coach high school at Charlotte Catholic. You sent kids there. They have a great athletic program. Their football team's always really good. Their baseball team has won a national championship within the last 10 years. And so
that's crazy to think.
Exactly. I mean, all the big boys out there, and they won a national championship.
Coastal Carolina. I mean, it just really kind of it speaks volumes on the quality of teams around the Carolinas. And I know that we've been around baseball our entire lives, especially with our young kids growing up and being involved with that, going to Cooperstown, which was incredible. Yeah. It's an incredible deal. If you ever have a chance to do that with your kids, I would highly recommend it. 100%. But you get to see the quality of baseball, and you think that like teams in the Northeast, because of the volume of people that they have, like New York, and the amount of passion they have for the game, or the Midwest, whether it's Chicago or Boston or New York or even Pennsylvania, you would think that, those baseball teams would just come down and dominate because the amount of kids that they have in the area, and they really don't, right? And the reason being is because it's such a seasonal sport, where if you go to warm weather cities, Arizona, California, Florida, Texas, Georgia, and Louisiana, the Carolinas, North and South, it's a year-round sport. Mm-hmm. So when these kids get to that age of, finding that passion of what they want to do, they're working on it year round, and they do this over these other states that you would think that have a little bit more passion and they love the game, especially their pro sports team.
Yeah, and North Carolina was very well, and South Carolina was very well represented. Just in that region alone, you had East Carolina who had a big win, and then they ended up getting eliminated. Wake Forest, who upset Tennessee, the number 1 seed and defending champion. So they're still alive. The Tar Heels, who came into the tournament, you and I watched a couple of the ACC tournament games together where they were just putting up runs every inning and just couldn't be stopped. Well, they ended up losing the game to Oklahoma. So today they play Oklahoma again to see who moves along. Yeah, but I think Carolina will get those bats going today. But Coastal Carolina is always a great story. I went to a VIP soccer camp or something there my senior year in high school, and I was offered to go play there, and I ended up choosing Wingate and then UNC Charlotte for college. But I always look back and go, man,
you chose Wingate over Coastal Carolina.
I did, and I look back at it, and there's 2 things I regret. First of all, I wish I would have chosen Coastal because even though it wasn't then what it is now, their baseball field back then, the Mets, who I'm a big Mets baseball fan, they had like the single A Mets team played at that field. So like whenever I'd go to that camp, I could go at nighttime and I'll go by myself and just watch the Mets, young teams play. But back to my point of what got me mad. So they're hosting in Conway, South Carolina. They've got a beautiful baseball stadium. They do a great job. Everybody in college baseball will tell you what a great job they do with the field, with hosting and all that. Well, here comes Florida, the Mighty Gators. And this is where I'm going to get on my rant for a minute because it's about Florida. It starts with Florida and it ends with Georgia. and I know when we're talking college football, that's a whole different ball game. But in baseball, you normally don't hear that. So Florida goes in there, and their head coach Kevin O'Sullivan, who's a questionable kind of dude anyway. He's won a national championship as a coach. He's obviously a great baseball coach. You and I have coached players that played for him. Philip Abner being one who's
at Florida.
So their coach Kevin O'Sullivan, but he's also known as kind of a arrogant kind of dude, rubs people the wrong way. There's a story that I won't even get into about that's a horrible story about him and having an affair and what went down after that I guess I talked to somebody in Gainesville about it, and they said it was a huge story when it went through. But I guess it just goes to show you about winning cures a lot of things. But it's a horrible story. But anyway, they come into Conway, South Carolina, and they get rain, and so he finds out that they want to move the game back an hour or 2, okay, just to let the field dry, give more time to get it in good shape. That's normal. We've had that happen a gazillion times, and even on these beautiful fields with the ground crews and all that stuff, when it rains so quickly in a certain amount of time, there's only so much these baseball fields can handle. So he is berating the ground crew, and I'm talking MF bombs, GD bombs, you name the bombs, he was dropping them. The host of the that works for NCAA, who's another national championship winning baseball coach, he's ripping these dudes, and I'm talking berating them about moving this game back an hour or 2, and just up and down cussing them, and it was ridiculous. And there was a story that also came out the other day when they played East Carolina, and East Carolina has a player who was one of the top recruits at all of baseball 3 years ago, was water skiing before coming to his freshman year at East Carolina, and somehow, and I don't remember the exact story, damages his leg to where they have to amputate knee down. And this kid was literally top 10 recruit. So he gets a prosthetic, and he's back on the team, and he plays, and he DHs, and it's a really cool story. And evidently the Florida coach and some of the players were talking crap to him about his leg the couple of days before. So this guy berates the ground crew and all that. Game's over. Florida's out. They get ousted, which was great to see them go and this guy go. And he goes to the podium after, and one of the reporters say, hey, do you care to address what happened before the game with you and the grounds crew and whatever? And he just goes, I handled that after the game with those guys, and it's all good. And like he was just angry they even asked the question. So that's it. Well, now Coach Kevin Schnell for Coastal Carolina, it's his turn on the podium. and they win. They're moving on, right? So you think
they're going to the Super Regional.
Yep. So you think he's just happy about that and all that, which I'm sure he was. But he gets up there and does something you do not see happen often. He gets up there and he rips Kevin O'Sullivan a new one. He talks about how disrespectful that guy is, how inappropriate what he said to these people were, how there's no place in baseball for that, for the way that he treated people. He's not going to come into his place where he's got a great grounds crew, a great staff. These guys are all working so hard to make this a great atmosphere, and he's going to come and he wore them out on ESPN and everywhere else.
Good.
And I thought it was great.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that a lot these days. You see people bite their tongue, especially when you're a guy, who's looking at a guy who's won a national championship, who's very respected as far as baseball wise. But I thought it was refreshing, and I loved it. And I mean, we had my festival in Myrtle Beach this year, our music festival, Carolina Country Music Fest, which we're a part of, and that's this weekend, which is not far from Conway. So I've gotten to know a lot of people that work there, their attorneys and all these things just through some of the events we've done, and they're all great people. Our buddy Charlie Nance, who's our golf guru that comes on with us, his son Hogan graduated from there. But man, he came out and he wore them out. So I already root for Coastal Carolina just because they're a Carolina team, and I know some folks there. I know some kids that have played there. But now I'm really rooting for him. This coach won me over. I knew not much about him. He's not the coach that won the national championship. I don't think back. I think that guy left for a bigger job. But man, I'm on Coach Snell's team. I'm hoping they keep rocking.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, we've been around sports. We've been around people. We've managed people. We've coached people. And the one thing I feel like a lot of men, most men, won't stand for is being disrespected.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to watch, even when you're seeing kids go through, high school and, they're different levels, and you see a kid kind of disrespecting a parent or, somebody else. And I don't know if there's anything more that gets my blood going than seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I always feel like I have something to say if I'm going to stand up for that, because, it's not the way to do things, and it's not the way, you should operate. So for when a coach says that and you're accountable and holding young men and teaching them lessons, and you're the one that's out there berating and treating people like dirt and they're beneath you, that doesn't sit well with me, or probably a lot of other men that are out there coaching men.
That's what Coach Schnall said for Coastal Carolina. He goes, you're out here and your job is to mentor and mold young men,
right,
and have them ready for the real world when they live. And then they're seeing you do that. And it got me thinking about, what else have those guys seen this guy do? What is this? And you know me, I'm like you. I've given some fiery halftime speeches. I've given some fiery between innings speeches.
Those are two different things.
That's what my point. So I'm not saying that my players haven't heard me say certain words and certain things, but they never saw me disrespect anybody. And so this guy, and then to what really gets me is this: if he came on the post game when they asked him that question, and if he said, "Yeah, I do want to address," first of all, they shouldn't have had to ask him. He should have sat down and said, before we get started, I would like to apologize.
I lost my temper.
Exactly. I lost my temper. I said some things that were unprofessional, and then it's over. But when you get snippy with the reporter that asked a valid question, and then his answer, but thankfully Coach Schnall for Coastal Carolina came in and ripped his butt and got it. The other thing that got me about the College World Series that I don't, and again, I don't want to sound like that old man, even though I walk like an old man right now and I look like an old man with my gray beard. I don't want to sound like an old man. So this is not.
I don't think that sounds anything like that. That sounds like a respectful man.
Well, I'm talking about this next story.
Oh.
So Georgia. I told you to start with Florida and goes to Georgia. Two of the biggest rivals in all sports, right? This has nothing to do with each one of them versus each other, but it just has to do with the two
teams. Were they
teams.
playing their music too loud for you?
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that. Although, I like my music loud, but I think even that's starting to grow on me. Georgia, some of their players are wearing their baseball jerseys unbuttoned down to about right here. So it's open, the chest hair, the necklace. Looks like they're in the 70s porno movie. I mean, like those old shirts.
It's a fashion statement.
Whatever the heck it is.
Are they wearing this during the game?
Oh, yeah, during the game. And Georgia's coach is fine with it. I'm not. Again, this is where I don't want to sound like the old man, but it goes back to respect. To me, baseball, and you could make this argument about all sports, but baseball, and I think you'll agree with me on this, baseball is a sport that really, really, really is built on history. It goes back to the 1800s. The things that baseball has done for the country, it has been very important. So to me, baseball is a game that's of respect, kind of like golf, is built off a lot of history. You can't watch I watched the Memorial yesterday, and we'll talk about that. But, you can't listen to them talk 3 minutes without them talking about some guy in 1894 or 1916.
The older guys.
Yeah, that did this and did that and established this.
And I kind of understand where you're going with this, because I'm torn, on that as well. Like, the tradition and the history should matter. Right. Especially if you're trying to teach the game and the forefathers, and you're trying to teach that to your kid. Not everybody does that. Right. No. And unfortunately, and I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, the way I feel about it is a lot like you. There should be history. There should be tradition. Those things do matter, because they gave you the opportunity to be where you're at right now and build the game. And you have an opportunity to carry on their legacy. So as a player that played in the NFL, the guys before me, I always respected them. Yeah. I always looked at them as, guys that paved the way for me to have the opportunities to make a lot of money. Yeah. I don't know if today's kids are doing that because of the things that you're saying. And I don't know if it's the loss of respect, for the game. Maybe the money has changed the way, but it's the entitlement. Right. And the entitlement that exists in our world today is very carried over into sports, because in football, I'll give you an example. Even when I played, we still had dress code. Mm-hmm. Right. You had to wear your socks to a certain, level. You had to wear your legs, your pants to cover your knee. You couldn't wear certain things because of contractual issues, in professional football. Yep. But in college football, if you remember, the shirt up, the tuck, everybody's showing their abs, even the big fat guys showing their Buddha, right? It wasn't the traditional way that, Penn State would have to have with no name on the back, right? Mm-hmm. The identity and character of players started becoming more important, or as important as the name on the front. Right. The name on the back became more important than the name on the front. Mm-hmm. And, that's kind of, the trend in which sports has been going. And in football, you used to have your haircut to a certain length. It couldn't go beneath your helmet.
Well, look at even the New York Yankees.
Or beyond your helmet.
The New York Yankees, which I agree with them changing this, but New York Yankees just this year changed the rule on facial hair. For the entire history of the New York Yankees, you couldn't have facial hair. That's right. And that just changed this year. So, there's a couple kids in particular that wear the shirt down like that. And again, I don't mind
the flat bill.
Yeah, which I'm not a fan of either, partly because it just doesn't look good on me. I like my hats low, and you can pull them off. But my kids didn't wear them.
But DJ, even with the pants, you've seen this go on. The pants, it's just become more acceptable, right?
The pants, though, you still are like, you see guys that wear them up to their knees still with stirrups.
That's the way they all used to wear them.
No doubt. But even with the pants down to the ankle. And then they went
down to the ankle with the flat.
Yeah, and all that. The flat bills, when I coached, my kids didn't wear flat bills. And when we had teams that the hats were flat bills, my kids turned them into hats like this just because they didn't like flat bills. I didn't either. I didn't like them. I thought they looked stupid. And obviously, again, all my friends wear them. So, and a lot of the other kids wear them. I just didn't look good in it either. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's just that. But my point is, I don't mind the flashy jewelry, and I don't mind the songs that they walk up to, all those things. I have no problem with swag and the kids having swag. I just think when their shirts are buttoned down here and their chest is out, and to me, it's just ridiculous. And so I hope Georgia gets their butts whooped every game for the next 10 years.
Because you don't like the way they look.
And I just think also, I was thinking about this, and I did not take my own advice. So I'm totally being a hypocrite right now when I say this. But I would, if I was coaching anymore, and if there are any kids that watch or listen to this, including my sons, and Dylan's right there or whatever. And this is going to be a little bit of a stretch on this, but you'll get my point. Everything that you do these days, we all know somebody's watching, right? So that's number one.
Under a microscope a lot more now because of social media
100%.
And phones.
Especially athletes. And we hear these crazy stories about an athlete makes an error or drops a pass, and then they're getting death threats and all this crazy stuff. But they're under the microscope. if a young man or woman looked at everything that they do when they know they're under the microscope as a job interview, I think it would really help curve a lot of things they do. So, for instance, would you wear your shirt buttoned down to your belly into a job interview? The answer is no. And I can name 50 other things that we see kids do, not just in sports.
Depends what kind of job interview.
Well, that's true. That is true. But I remember when I was in college, and I was on some hard times, and I didn't have a car, and there was a Radio Shack across the street from this shack that I lived in, and it was condemned, and literally we were getting it for $300 a month. Like 6 of us lived in it. And so I walked over to Radio Shack, and a buddy that I knew growing up, his dad was like a regional guy for them. So I go to this job interview, and I'm wearing pants, whatever kind of shirt. I had hair back then, so I think it was probably at least brushed decently, no beard. And I was wearing Sebagos, if you remember what those were, the slip-on loafers, and I didn't have socks on. And I'm in this.
This is your job interview.
Yeah. And I know, you just didn't wear socks with those shoes. I never did. And I'm sitting in the job interview, and I'm in a chair, and it's going all right. This guy's kind of a dork, and I'm thinking, man, what am I going to do at Radio Shack? I don't know what all these wires and all these buttons are, but I need a job. And in the middle of the interview, the guy stops me and says, "Why didn't you wear socks?" And I was like, well, with these shoes, I just never wear them. And he goes, "Well, if you're going to go to a job interview, son, I would give you some advice that you wear socks and you come looking as professional as you can." And I left that interview thinking, I ain't getting that job. Sure enough, I got it. I got fired 4 months later because I didn't have enough money to buy a razor to shave, and I had stubble, and they fired me. But anyway,
isn't that? I mean,
but like, you're going on, like, look at it as a job interview. When you do these post-game interviews, when you're on social media doing TikTok or whatever it is, everything's a job interview these days because everything stays with you. Back in our days, I got in a lot of trouble. When I was getting recruited by schools, not one time did a school ask me about the trouble I got into. Not once. Nowadays, they vet everything, right? We know that. So, we could do things differently. Our parents could do things differently, right? There was no cameras, social media, cell phones. Nowadays, I would tell these kids, everything you do, look at it as a job interview, because, when I hire people, I've hired hundreds of people. When I looked at their resume, I looked at a few things. I looked to see if they played sports, or anything like sports, right?
Explain why.
And the reason was because I knew that if they played a sport or ROTC or even the band or whatever it was, I knew that they had discipline enough that they were going to be there when I needed them.
And work well with others.
And work well with others, exactly. And understand what a team is, right? And whenever we hired anybody, it's about building a team. So I looked to see if they were in any of those type of things, sports or ROTC or the band or whatever. I would look to see where they went to school. I would look to see what they majored in. Most of the time it was, communications or business or whatever. I never gave a crap about their GPA. I never looked at it. I never looked into their past. Now, as years go on, especially when we worked for CBS and Viacom, which is one of the biggest companies in the country, which we worked for a long time, they did start doing background checks on folks that they did. I had nothing to do with it. But my point is, I looked at a few things, and then once I got them in the door, usually as an intern first, and we hired a bunch of interns, it was because we get them in there, and it's like getting a 6-month trial run. If they get along with my guys, are they working hard? Are they doing what the guys need them to do? Can we count on them? Are they on time? Will they fill a slot on the weekend that somebody just called me an hour ago saying they can't be there? And so that was what was important to me. Nowadays, I mean, there's so many things that a coach or a general manager can look at and go, man, look at this kid. Yeah, this kid's a 5-star quarterback, but look what he was doing right here. He's on TikTok with 2 guns in his hand, and girl, like I'm saying, like, there's just so many chances to make a mistake.
Well, let me.
And I'm not saying having your shirt down is on that level. So let me make sure I'm clear on that. I'm just thinking the coach. I'm talking about the coaches here. The coach of Florida was a complete disgrace. Hopefully the university reprimands them for that behavior, and hopefully it hurts them moving forward with recruits and parents that don't want that around their kid. And number 2, the Georgia coach, I get letting your players have some swag and all that, but dude, we don't need them out there playing. It's not the Savannah Bananas, it's a Georgia, which is a great school and great history, great baseball. So that's what bothered me.
How deep do you want to get into this? Because there's there's so many layers to this onion, in my opinion, and what you're talking about. And, I think it starts honestly with, kind of society and what we've accepted and what we've allowed. And, you want me to be honest with you, it's your fault. It's my fault. It's the men's fault, right? Because we've been demasculated a little bit with, what feminism is. And we've been told that we can't do this and we can't do this. And we're not allowed to have structure. We're not allowed to discipline. And we're to the degree that, maybe is necessary sometimes. And we've, as men, have allowed that to, kind of control the narrative when it comes to these things, because that's where it starts. It doesn't start with me, getting this kid at 20 years old or 19 years old. It starts with the formative years at 9, 10, when dad's not around, when mom is yelling at dad because dad has been too hard on the son.
Mm-hmm.
And dad is accepting that and saying, you know what, I just don't, I want to keep peace and I don't want to rock the boat. So I'm going to allow these things to happen. But, there's so many things that goes back. I'm a sociology major, so I can take this all the way back to like the, beginning of when how to raise kids.
We don't want to go that deep,
right?
We don't want to go that deep.
And it really, it's just kind of a byproduct of our society.
But still though, as a head coach, and I think you're totally right. I don't disagree with you at all. But when you're a head coach, especially, let's just use the Florida guy, for example, when when you're a coach, right? Or a player, right? There's certain guys, you talked about this in the NFL, certain guys are going to get away with certain things. If your coach has won a national championship, you're going to get away with a lot more than a guy who's trying to make a name for himself. If you're a player who's a Pro Bowl veteran, you're going to get some days off for rest that a rookie's not going to get. You're going to get away with some things.
Life isn't fair.
Life isn't fair, exactly. So if you're that coach at Florida in particular, where you're the king of the crop, baby, you've won a national championship, you're always great. You're putting your players into Major League Baseball. I mean, the guy's a great coach. That
is he though?
Well, at least from X's and O's and recruiting, it appears to be. That was what I was going to get to. Is forget how these kids are raised or whatever. He's got enough leverage that he can coach them how he wants to, and I bet he does. By the way, I bet you he's a tough guy, probably like we are. The way that he was ripping these people, I'm sure those players have seen it many times themselves. The Coastal Carolina guy, I don't know enough about with that, but the Georgia coach. Again, he's a guy that's got a name. So, you know what? If you tell your players
Georgia,
you have to wear
you're
your
coaching
jerseys.
at Florida, you're coaching in a big time program in the SEC, right? Or the Pac-12 or the ACC. You've earned that position for the most part. So, yeah, you're going to have a little clout.
Yep.
People are going to respect you because of the position you hold.
Yep.
And you're the head coach. So, therefore, you're going to do you're going to fall in line or you're going to go somewhere else. So, the coaches are allowing the culture to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And the hard part for these coaches is that if I want to get the players I'm looking for, I have to create an environment of fun, but still structure and discipline and being able to do this. As a high school coach, we're concerned about all these things, right? We don't. When did all the uniforms become a big deal? Why does the uniform matter?
That's the craziest thing that I don't get either. Like I love
Oregon is a perfect example of this, DJ.
Yeah,
Oregon. How do they get better recruits? They show the swag, the cool stuff. I get to have 7, 8 uniforms if I go to Oregon. That's cool for me as a kid.
Yep.
They've promoted that for these programs, just like Georgia, where I get to wear my shirt halfway sideways. If I get a kid that I'm looking for that's going to have that's concerned about maybe the swag and the bat flips and all the things that go along with the name on the back, right? I'm going to have an opportunity to play for this coach at Georgia, and I get to go get them because it's going to be fun. Versus if I go to, let's say, Vanderbilt, where everybody's going to be tucked in, we're all going to be in a straight line, and we're going to be looking straight ahead. We're going to say yes, sir, no, sir. Our dugouts are going to be immaculate. Yeah, everything is going to be set up to the T. That's good for some players, right? But it's not for others.
No, you're right. And listen, I was thinking about coaches who have that kind of swag and that kind of leverage that don't.
Miami and Penn State, and this isn't just happening.
Just go to basketball. I mean, look at Danny Hurley. So you got Danny Hurley, who is very unlikable. Unless you're a UConn fan, you don't like him. I'm a Bobby Hurley fan, obviously, and Danny's a great basketball coach. But boy, I tell you what, I would love my kid to play for Danny Hurley, because is he going to get yelled at? Yep. Is he going to get screamed at? Yep. Is he probably going to get belittled here and there? Yep. Is his coach going to get 2 technicals every other game and make smart comments?
Bobby Knight lost his job because of it.
That's kind of when it started.
So you have to be careful, because there's a line.
Bobby Knight also crossed like throwing.
According to who?
Well, throwing a chair across the court.
Ask his players.
The players loved him.
So his players didn't feel like he was crossing lines. Only who did?
Well,
the perception from the media and the public thought he's crossing a line. He must be beating these kids. He must be berating them.
Well, he got, he did get caught, grabbing or hitting a kid.
Yeah, okay.
Bobby might be an extreme.
And that kid? You know what that kid probably did? He probably says, you know what? I deserve that.
Well, I bet
I learned a lesson because of
that's
that.
what I'm saying. And to your point, there are players that can handle it and that can eat it. We know. I mean, there's guys when I coach that I could get all over their butt and they would respond. There's guys that I had to sit down next to them, put my arm around and say, hey, bud, you okay? Don't worry about it.
Changed, though. The way I coach a kid now can't be the way I coached a kid 15 years ago.
Heck no. Not even close.
Why?
Because the culture has changed.
That's right. And what? In the homes, right? What we allow these kids to do, we don't punish kids anymore. We spank them on the wrist and we count to 10. We don't hold kids accountable anymore.
Look at sports. I mean, look at
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, look at the penalties that are called.
Look at that because of what we're doing in the home.
Yeah.
As a dad or a family, when little Johnny steps across the line, stop it, little Johnny. Don't do that again. Little Johnny does it again. Says, what are you going to do, Dad? I can't go. There's so much more that I have to be aware of because of what you said with social media and all the things that we're under a microscope as parents.
No doubt. I mean, I almost expect that, like in 5 years, when a guy comes up to bat in baseball, he'll have like a tripod with his iPad on it, because these kids can't get their faces out of iPod pads nonstop 20 hours a day. So they're not going to know what to do. So even playing baseball, we have to be checking out their TikTok before the pitch comes. And it has gotten ridiculous. But, again, not to go too deep in that, but it just bothered me. The good news is both Georgia and Florida got eliminated, so we don't have to see them anymore.
Back to
Texas, by the way. So the number 1 seed was Vandy. They're out. Number 2 seed, Texas. They're out. So the SEC came in.
Not just the SEC.
It's not, but I'm saying they are a great powerhouse in basketball, in most sports, but in SEC baseball, well, there's 4 of the big dogs that are out. And so now it's wide open. North Carolina's got to win today to stay in, and I think they will. But as far as just watching the tournament and forget the stuff about the uniforms, it has been a lot of fun. Some slugfest, some extra innings, and
that's what makes baseball. That's what makes the College World Series, I think, in my opinion, probably the hardest to win in all of college sports, all amateur sports. To win a college baseball championship, you have to run the gamut, and you have to do it for multiple nights in multiple different positions, not multiple different areas, multiple different conditions.
Mm-hmm.
You could sit there and say football, where bigger, faster, and stronger is usually going to win. In baseball, you get a dominant pitcher one night, or your bats go cold, or the level
pitching just by itself.
The level of variance that you're going to have is going to be so much greater because of the things that the error that exists in these games, right?
Yeah.
To hit 300 you're missing 7 out of 10 times, right? So those numbers are going to make it easier for smaller teams that may not be as talented to step up and beat you any given night. If you lose twice, you're gone.
Well, in the storylines, we watched the NCAA tournament in basketball. We did our show from Vegas. Everybody loves March Madness, whether they're a big sports fan or not. There's something for everybody. But the storylines with players and coaches is what we love a lot about that. Same with the college football stuff. And the college baseball tournament's the same. Like some of these stories of these players, there's a kid, and I forget the name of the team, but they were playing Wake Forest the other night, they were playing NC State the other night. And they said before the game that, this kid was at NC State and he played there. And the coach just said, dude, you're just not big enough or strong enough or fast enough. You're just not going to play here. So he transferred to this school. It's a small school. I forget what it was, but they matched up in the tournament. And this kid was 4 for 4 with 3 doubles and a home run. And I'm thinking to myself, that kid. And he didn't do anything stupid. He wasn't mouthing over to NC State saying you should, he just played baseball, and it was great to watch. But good luck to the Tar Heels today. their offense, they only scored, I think, 4 runs in their loss yesterday, but they've been scoring double digits.
Isn't that what's crazy though? I mean, I'm just looking at some of the matchups, and like you see Irvine, against UCLA. UCLA is number 15 in the country. Normally, if you're looking at basketball or football or soccer or any other sport, we're saying, okay, this is why are we watching? This is going to be a rout.
Yeah.
In baseball, all it takes is a team to get hot, the momentum to start taking place, the bats to get hot, and a pitcher to be, pitching the game of his life.
Yeah.
Any one of those things can happen, and you might see a different outcome because of the variance in these games with, the lack of success. All right, and that's the difference, and why I think it's so much harder to win a college baseball, because you have to carry that momentum.
Yeah, and you've got to win 2 or 3
all the way through, but you have to beat everybody, and any team can beat you. It doesn't matter. Because, I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but, the amount of scholarships that are given to these schools.
Well, also, listen.
The talents can be more spread out.
And to talk about baseball for a second, this as well as I do from when we coached and played, and you were a very good baseball player. I was a good player. We both have coached and won championships and all that. The thing about baseball is if a team has 1 or 2 pitchers, they're going to be trouble, because, and we've seen it so many times.
They're going to be trouble in a 4-game tournament. They're not going to be trouble. You have to have multiple pitchers. When we went to the biggest difference between good and great in teams that we played when we went, and this is 12-year-old baseball, but it still exists, right? Is the teams from Florida, the teams that brought the guys in, they had 12 pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
We had 2.
Oh, we scored more runs than any team in the tournament, but we didn't have the pitching.
But they had 12 pitchers.
Yeah.
Everyone on their team could pitch.
Yeah.
Right. And so it gave them a lot of options.
You can only pitch so many innings.
Pitch X amount of innings.
Well,
right.
But that's my point. Like, pitching is always going to be the key. If you've got some studs
pitching
in
dominates,
pitching,
yes.
Especially like you said, if you have to win 2 out of 3 and you've got 2. Remember when LSU was in it with Paul Skeens? They knew that he's going to throw 9 innings. No one was going to touch him. If they scored 1 or 2 runs, they win the game. And so you're right. That's why you see some of these upsets, is because if the team has a pitcher or 2, you're in the ball.
We're going to save them for this team.
Yeah.
And this is the game that we're trying to win, because we feel like with our other pitchers, we can hang and battle with these other teams. So the strategy, the strategery is, if I save my best pitcher for this team and we can knock them off, we got a chance to advance.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and listen, I love Major League Baseball. This is more baseball than I thought I'd ever get you to talk, and I wasn't planning on it. But it leads me to another question that happened this weekend or the past 5-6 days. The Atlanta Braves, who they got up to a 0-8 start, then they got hot. Now they got Acuna back and they're getting healthy, but they're still struggling. But I think they're 10 games out now, but they played Philadelphia, and obviously Philly was in first place until yesterday. Now my Mets are back in first where they belong. But but anyway, in that game,
it all goes back to the Mets.
Yeah,
always.
Well, in that game, Atlanta's pitcher Strider, who's a great pitcher, throws at 99 miles an hour, and he's been hurt. He's come back. He drills Bryce Harper in the elbow, drills him.
Good.
Yeah. Well, and of course he says it went on purpose. And him after the game, he was very apologetic. And Bryce Harper's a great player, all this stuff. It got me thinking, if I'm this in baseball back in the day, again, we're kind of doing that whole back in the day thing where, you used to walk uphill 20 miles to school and back. But, back in the day in baseball, if one of your best players got drilled, it was no one had to say a word. We knew that our pitcher at some point in the next couple innings was going to drill their best player, right? We knew it, and the other team knew it. You hear so many great players that say it funny now. They're like, "Oh yeah, when our pitcher would hit, Ohtani, and I'm Francisco Lindor."
You know why that stopped?
Well, it hadn't stopped all the way, because that's what I was going to get to. It stopped to some extent.
Curtailed. You know why that slowed down? Is because the referees got involved with it.
The umpires
started become, and they knew all along, but they were put, the pressure was put on them.
Major League Baseball
stepped in and said, listen, this is not good for the game.
Yeah.
Right. Guys are going to get hurt.
We don't want our stars getting hurt. Same reason the NFL protects quarterbacks.
Right. It's the same type of thing.
And it still does happen. And Acuna got hit pretty hard, and it still does happen sometimes. The Mets, by the way, over the last 10 years have been hit more than any team, and it's by like 400. I mean, it's crazy how many times they get hit. I can't remember.
Stop crowding the plate.
Well, I don't remember them throwing it. It ticks me off every time. When one of our guys get hit, we don't ever hit anybody. Going all the way back to when
maybe that's why they're
Roger Clemens hit Piazza, or threw the bat at him, and when Piazza, or they had to come to Shea Stadium, or was it?
You just knew.
Well, but we didn't. Our pitcher didn't even throw at him. I was so mad that Clemens had to hit back then. The pitcher had to hit in the National League Park. We didn't throw at him. Mets had another game in the World Series against Kansas City where our pitcher Noah Syndergaard, the very first batter of the game, who had been killing the Mets, he threw a 100-mile fastball over his head.
Well, he threw it behind him.
Yeah, and didn't hit him.
He threw it behind him.
Yeah, but didn't hit him, and they threw him out of the game. Yeah. First pitch of the game.
You're surprised I knew that.
I was surprised you knew that. I was so angry.
And he didn't. I mean, it was a no-brainer for the ump. You're out.
We were dealing.
You can't throw the ball behind a guy and expect not to get thrown out of the game.
Well, first pitch of the game, I think you just get a warning, because
he threw behind
but
him.
He didn't hit him, and everybody knew what he was doing.
Threw behind
Everyone
him.
knew that was going to happen. That first pitch.
That's and if I'm an umpire, if I'm an umpire that has been coming, that the Major League Baseball has come to me and said, we know these things are going to happen. Put an end to it. As soon as that happens, you're out.
Well, they threw him out, and if you want to hear a great rant, our coach at the time was Terry Collins, and man, that rant was brilliant because it was in the World Series, man. And when the Mets were down, so we were at that game, by the way. Well,
the manager's route probably should have been the guy that was if I'm a manager and I know the umpires are being very strict on this, I can't throw it, guys, because if Syndergaard is my best pitcher and he gets thrown out first pitch, then what?
Exactly.
So he's the idiot.
He should have waited about 2 or 3 innings.
That would have been different.
Yeah.
If you're getting tired, this is your sign for being tired. Throw behind a guy, will pull you out.
Yeah. Right? He should have waited.
There should have been more strategy involved with that than the very first pitch where you know you're going to get thrown out of the game because of what has happened and taken place in the history between the two teams.
But my point is still, I'm all for if you hit one of my best players, and I think
you're an eye for an eye.
I am, and not if you hit the guy on a curveball that just doesn't break.
That's different. But guys are going to get hit, but there's intention.
But if you drill him after he hits a home run or something, or after the player in front of him, hits a home run and flips his bat.
Do you know why Syndergaard got thrown out?
Well, because everybody knew it was going to happen.
Well, because the player before the game before, he was baiting them to throw the pitches.
He was killing them.
He was taking pitches.
Yeah.
He took 3 pitches. He stepped out of the box before the pitch was even thrown.
Yep.
And then on a 3-0 count, the pitcher who was pitching at the time threw the slowest fastball right down the gut, trying to get a strike because he didn't want to walk him.
Yep.
And he took it yard on him. And he bat flipped and took him about 35 seconds to get around the bases.
Oh, I remember. It's a sore spot to this day.
Right?
I wish Syndergaard would have hit him and not threw behind him.
Well, and then the very next pitch was the throw behind him where he gets ejected in the World Series.
So anyway, I still believe in doing it. I know it doesn't happen as much.
Surprised I knew that.
I am surprised you knew
all
that.
of that.
That was impressive. Like I said, Dylan and Connor and myself were at that game.
Yeah.
When that happened, it was nuts. But anyway, that's enough baseball for today. If you haven't watched College World Series, though, check it out. It is great, and the story.
Well, I gotta say one more thing. On the we talk about this in other sports all the time. The flopping and things like that take place. Has baseball gotten too soft with some of their rules? Like, for example, the catcher blocking home plate can't be there. You have to sit to the side or in front of the plate. But if somebody runs you over, it's incumbent upon the runner. I don't know if you saw the Oregon game when the guys around in third base
hosed.
And Oregon, the guy kind of, it's a play at home. The ball bounces high. Catcher misses the ball. The guy coming home and this is a close game. This isn't a World Series game. Yeah. And the player from Oregon gets ejected and thrown out. They take away the run, and I think Oregon loses the game because of it.
They did. It was an awful call.
It was a decision that decided the outcome of a game in a bang-bang play.
It was an awful call
where
the
there
catcher,
really wasn't much contact other than.
Well, no, the Oregon guy drilled the catcher.
No,
the catcher was standing in front of the plate where he's not allowed to stand.
That's right.
So
But if you watch the slide in slow-mo, the Oregon player doesn't know what to do. He's trying to score. It's a bang play. He kind of goes to his knees to try to slow down and stop and hesitates. He doesn't run through him and launch himself.
But he hit some good, but he had no choice.
That's right.
And the rule is you have to stand behind the plate and tag or
no, it's in front of the plate. It's in front of the plate.
Yeah, but not directly in front of the plate. No, that's what he did.
Not on the plate.
You got to give the guy a path.
In front of the plate so you can swipe as you're going
You
by.
have to give the guy a pass.
That's right.
He can't hit you. It was an awful call, and I hate that rule. I think the catcher should be able to stand there. That's part of baseball. It's like hockey.
The catcher should be able to block. Then the runner should be able to run over.
100%. I agree. I agree. I see why they changed it. Same reason they added the bag on the side at first base now, so there's no collisions at first. You touch the second base.
Yeah, the secondary bag. Right.
So I get it. But, I will say this. If you're going to make the rule, again, that's not a rule that I'm like overly against, but if you're going to make it, you got to call it. And that dude was right in front of it,
100%.
Especially with replay. How do you not change that? It cost that team a game.
They called him safe initially, and then they went and looked at the replay, which makes it even more egregious.
That's what makes it worse.
And they called him out, and they ejected him.
Yep, and Oregon lost the game because of it. So that was horrible. It reminded me, my son Connor, when we were playing baseball. He was probably, at the time, I would guess, Dylan was probably 8, so Connor's probably 7, and Connor, hard-nosed, tough kid, and we were playing in a game against our big rival at Indian Trail. I couldn't stand the coach of the other team.
Connor, run him over.
Well, I didn't say that. Connor, I didn't have to tell that too. But Dylan had already hit 2 home runs, and anyway, we're down a run or something, and Connor's up. Keen Gresser, who we coached for a while, is on second, and Connor crushes one to the gap, and Keen scores, and Connor's coming. He's running the third. Connor knows he's the winning run. Kids are gonna get the ball at the fence. And, it's Indian Trail or Old Providence or wherever you play, Matthews, all the kids know each other regardless of what team they're on. Well, one of Connor's really good buddies was this kid named Jimmy. Jimmy was built a lot like Connor, tough kid, and thick kid. And he was catching for the other team. Well, Connor's coming around third, knowing he's a winning run. Our third base coach, Rich Gresser, totally telling him to hold on. There's only one out. And Connor runs right through it. And the ball gets thrown to home, and Connor hits this kid so hard that I'm not kidding. He went 10 feet into the backstop, and Connor touches home plate. The kid drops the ball. We get the run, and they called him out, and they should have. And I went nuts, not at the umpire, at Connor. Uh-huh. I think I said, you went from being a hero to a zero for not listening,
He probably had a couple of other choices.
I'm sure. I felt bad for it afterwards, but because we ended up losing the game. But anyway, the game was stopped for 15 minutes. And so I see why they have that rule. I just think if you're going to have it, you better call it, especially when you have replay, and especially when you call them safe on the field. Go to the replay, and the fact they reverted it when they see the guy was clearly blocking the plate was ridiculous to me. So I
just had a rant on that.
No, but it's true.
If we're going to talk baseball, that was the one thing that stood out.
It's true. So hopefully, after hearing all these stories we're talking about, you tune in. You get a little bit of everything in the College World Series now. You got.
I didn't know I was going to be talking baseball today.
Well, I didn't know we would talk this long, but I just thought that there were some interesting stories.
Yeah. There's so many. It's just the parallels in sports and society, DJ. And if you really want to kind of get the political part of this and, where we are. And I've said this a million times that it's funny to see how much our society resembles sports and vice versa. Right. And the way that our athletes are growing up, and the way, sometimes that they're forgetting the traditions and histories that exist, kind of like what we're forgetting the history and traditions and the reasons why we are free as a country.
If the adults aren't the ones teaching it, then how are the young kids going to know it? That's definitely a problem. Let's switch over to golf for a second. This is somewhere where
nobody's kicking anybody's ass or running anybody over on this one.
Yeah, there's
except for the guy that got hit with the ball.
My God,
did you see
Jordan
that?
Spieth crushed him. I mean, that's why I never play in pro-ams.
I think he jumped in front of the ball just so he could take his shirt off, because he was jacked.
He was jacked. He
you got to give him credit for that.
And I'm sure I know he got a signed glove and a couple of things, I'm sure. But the thing about this tournament that I wanted to talk about, because the Memorial is always great to watch. Jack Nicklaus.
No, we're talking about two different things. Jordan Spieth almost killed somebody
in that.
Yeah, in the other
tournament you're talking about was another guy that I saw when he hit the guy. But Jordan Spieth almost killed somebody. But the Memorial is always a great tournament, beautiful golf course. Jack Nicklaus's baby, and first of all, I thought Jack, if you watch the broadcast, was very honest on talking about, yes, Scottie Scheffler is unbelievable. And yes, right now we're going to stay. I mean, he's won 16 tournaments already. I think it's the third or fourth quickest ever in history. But he goes, one thing that we got to consider, though, is if you look at the field, it's not the same as it was when these other guys played, because a lot of the good players are over at Live. And until they get back on the same field every game, every tournament, we'll see. But he did make sure to give Scheffler his credit. That's what I wanted to talk about. And we could get Charlie on our golf group, but we'll get him on maybe later to address this. I watch a lot of golf. I follow golf enough to be dangerous. I'm one of the guys that Tiger Woods got into golf. I never liked golf. I never played golf. I never watched golf. My dad never watched golf. And then when Tiger Woods came on the scene, I, like most people that didn't grow up with golf in their families or whatever, I started watching golf, right? Because of Tiger. That was me. I was old. I was probably 19 or 20. So, I'm watching it from a different place, whereas kids that were 4, 5, and 6, that's why they got into golf. That's why they started playing at a young age. Well, I started watching and playing at a later age. And Tiger was unbelievable. When I watched Scheffler play, I think, as far as my eyes have seen, right? I'm not going to talk about Jack Nicklaus or Arnold Palmer, because I never watched them play. And I know that they're great. And I know that the amount of tournaments Jack's won. I know all that stuff. I never saw him play. Out of the players that I've seen play with my own eyes, and I'm talking about the guys who in the last 20 years people would say are great. We would say Phil Mickelson. We would say Tiger Woods. Rory. Brooks,
I know you don't like him.
Yeah, but he's definitely in there. Brooks Koepka.
Well, I mean, and John Rahm was head of the next round as number
Speed,
one
Dustin Johnson for a while there. So those guys are the guys I'm talking about. Tiger, obviously. I don't remember anyone playing at the level that Scheffler's playing these last 2 years except Tiger. He was down after round one. Scheffler was down, I think, 4 strokes maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I went on to bet him to win the tournament before the tournament started. He was plus 250,
mm-hmm.
which you bet. That's rare. Like normally the
400,
400 to 600. He was plus 250. After the first day, I go to bet it. I want to say I got him at plus. It was less than 250. It was like plus 180. They still thought he was going to win, and then he cuts it to 3, I think, going into Saturday.
And then he was probably minus.
Then it was even money. I took it again. And, he runs away with it. And he didn't have his best game. He's still pulling some things to the left a little bit, but he putted well. My question to you is this. You've watched golf longer than I have, but let's just stick with those guys I've mentioned who will admit in the last 20, 25 years are the best guys. Is there anyone that you can name that I'm missing that is on a streak and that looks just unstoppable besides Tiger that Scottie Scheffler looks? And do you think that he has a chance to break some of Tiger's records and Jack's records? Because he's young. He's been married for a couple of years. He already has a child, which people always say with golf, when they get older and they're successful, then they settle, they get married, they have kids, it changes something in them. And all the golfers talk about it. Well, Scottie's done that already. So his success has come after that. Well, the baby was, a year ago during it. But my point is, all that's kind of behind him now. He'll have other kids, I'm sure. But my point is, he's focused on golf. Well, and he's not, a lot of those things that get in the way. Now, injury, you never know, right? We can't talk about injuries because we don't know. But I think this dude has a chance to go down as one of the best ever. And help.
Will there be an asterisk by it though? Because of what Jack said with Liv.
Yeah.
Right. And you look at what's happening, between these two tournaments. I mean, I know that in majors,
he's playing against all those guys.
He's playing against all of them. But the competition on a week-to-week basis isn't nearly the same as if those guys in Live are going to be there.
Yep.
The top 10 golfers in the world are Scottie Scheffler, number 1, Rory McIlroy, number 2, Xander Schauffele, number 3.
All PGA.
No, this is all PGA. This has nothing because the guys in Live aren't in the world golf rankings anymore.
Like DeChambeau, we forgot.
That's right. Yeah. So guys like DeChambeau are guys that would give Scheffler all he could handle.
Look at the majors. I mean, every major since Liv has existed, some of these Liv guys have either won it or at least been in it. So you're right. I mean, the field is definitely much stronger when they're together.
The Liv came and they handpicked the most popular golfers to go there that wanted to go. They gave them exorbitant amounts of money to go play, to build their product. And because of that, you've taken away a big percentage of the top players in the world in that pool.
Yep.
So I agree with what Jack said, is that, you look at the level of competition on a week-to-week basis. These guys, I mean, look at the leaderboard. I didn't hear half of these guys And
Griffin. I know he's won a couple.
He played his ass off. He had an eagle. He putted well.
Yeah.
But you knew under pressure that Scheffler was going to just show up, just play his game, and nobody was going to come to him.
Yep.
You don't have guys that are going to look at there and say, I'm going to challenge him and I'm going to beat him. He had his first bogey. I want to say it was like of the whole tournament. I think it was on hole 7 or 8. He had his first bogey, and I think on that same hole, Griffin birdie. So I think it got to like a stroke. Yeah, it got. And then Scheffler just went. All right, I've been in third gear. Let me go. And the kid obviously made some mistakes on his own, but Scheffler didn't miss many putts at all. He was over par in his final round. Right. Scheffler was under par. Exactly. And when the pressure exists, Scheffler just walks right through it. There's no pressure for him. Yeah. Right. Because there's nobody putting pressure on him. He knows that people are going to crumble around him. So he just plays his game. If he needs to, he can step on the gas. Now, if he's playing majors, if Rory were in this tournament, if DeChambeau were in this tournament, if Rahm was in this tournament, Koepka was in this tournament, if Dustin Johnson was in this tournament, that they normally play in. Right now, there might be a little different type of pressure, and I'm not saying that Scheffler wouldn't win, right? Because he's playing as well as anybody right now. He's beating those guys whenever he does play. But he's beating me and you. I mean, and I hate to not give these other guys credit because they're damn good golfers. They'd kill us and anybody else, right? Yeah, they are, where they're at for a reason. They're professional golfers. And Scheffler is just going through these rounds and just walking through. He won this by 5 shots. I know. And there was a hole yesterday towards the end. I forget what number. Let's just say it was 15 or 16. I watched the thing. It was definitely towards the end, 15 or 16, I think. And they asked Jack what he would do on this hole. And I think it was a par 5, and Scheffler hit a nice drive. And Jack says, well, if I was him on this one, because you got the lead, you don't want to make any mistakes. This is a hole you could get in trouble. I just hit it over here and hit it to the fairway, play up and try to make birdie. Yeah. Scheffler hits it over the green. Yeah. He goes, no, I'm going this way. And he still gets up and down. And but the guy who was playing against in his group, he hit a better shot. He hit on the green, just barely rolled over, hits it, just almost makes the chip, just rolls past the hole. And because Scheffler makes the putt for birdie, puts a little bit more pressure on Blake, and he goes out there or Griffin, excuse me, and he misses the putt. Yeah, and he makes par. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like Scheffler, even on a hole where he could have laid up and taken it easy, he took a chance when he didn't have to, because that's how confident he is. He knows he's going to hit the ball where it's going, where at least he's not going to be in trouble. And that's exactly, you're right. He went over the green a little bit, chipped back on. But I can't wait for the U.S. Open, because number one, if you've seen the videos of that course, obviously we know they always make the rough deeper in the U.S. Open. But these guys right now that are playing there already are like the big time golfers that, I guess they go get like a couple rounds in before the actual tournament. So they've been kind of doing that, and they're showing them, they're like, look at this rough, and they're dropping their ball. And it just disappears. You can't see it anywhere. And that's why I love the U.S. Open, because it always makes these dudes. Yeah, exactly. It humbles them. But you asked the question, and I didn't answer your question. You asked the question is, do I think that Scheffler is going to be on the same page as Tiger and Jack? No, I don't. I don't think that the golf world views him in that caliber. I think he'll win a lot of tournaments. I do agree with you. He's a little bit more level than maybe Tiger was. I think Jack, kind of had things figured out. It was a different time in the 60s versus 70s versus, Tiger and, kind of the infiltration of the, young golfer and, the athletes and, everybody that was joining the game. Tiger's responsible for that movement, right? And no doubt about it. For the success that these guys are having now, that's why they all look up to him. But, Scheffler is just an even kill guy. I remember Jack saying this about Tiger even. He goes, Tiger is great. He's as good, if not better than me. Jack's always going to be a humble guy. Sure. But he goes, I'm interested to see what happens to Tiger when life hits him in the face. Exactly. Because life hits everybody in the face in some way, shape, or form. Yep. What do you do when you're playing the game of life? Yep. How are you going to handle that? And we saw the ups and downs and struggles with the 7 irons and the drugs and the missteps that in the Perkins, the women, and all the stuff that Tiger went through. Scheffler doesn't seem like, he seems like he goes home to his family, plays with his kids, and then goes golfs.
I mean, that's
his life.
Exactly. And that's why I think that he's got a chance, because I think that he is as good as a golfer I've ever seen, minus Tiger. And again, I'm talking to people I see. It will be in the majors. He does play against these guys, and I do think that's great. I do think the live guys playing in the PGA.
DeChambeau is more talented than Scheffler. He is more talented than Scheffler.
Yeah.
He's not as consistent as Scheffler.
Right.
In golf, consistency matters as much as talent.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Right. But if talent, means something, when DeChambeau gets it going, right, he can shoot, 58. I mean, I've seen him
he'll be the favorite for the U.S. Open. I doubt it'll be plus 250.
I don't think he'll be the favorite for the U.S. Open.
Oh, he will.
Scheffler or DeChambeau?
No, DeChambeau. No. Scheffler.
Well, because of his consistency.
Right. But he won't be 250. I think it'll be probably plus 500-600 because the field's stronger and the course will be tough. And like you said, DeChambeau, long hitters, correct me if I'm wrong, but long hitters at the U.S. Open, and you got to keep it on the fairway, obviously, because the rough is awful. Well, guess what? DeChambeau hits it further than anybody, but like you said, is he going to be consistent? Scheffler is pretty consistent. Now, he has been pulling it a little bit, but he seems to have gotten that figured out. It's funny how we talked about the driver and they test for the drivers and all that stuff. And, we did some research on it. And it's funny because even a lot of the golfers don't know really what the rules are. They know that they test 80 guys or whatever it is, 60 guys. But one of my good buddies and Patrick O'Connor, one of our good buddies who loves golf as much as anybody I know, and he's a good golfer, but he's a member out at Palisades, a course that you and I have played 100 times. Oh, it's great course, very difficult, very hard course. But he was telling me the other day he was all excited because he just went and got fitted for a new 3-wood, and he had not had a new 3-wood in 15, 16 years. He's used the same one. And this new 3-wood technology, he's getting like 35 yards more and more. Well, and DJ, that's what you just said right there. I think Charlie would agree, and anybody that's an avid golfer would agree, is that the technology and the golf club and the golf ball in particular have gotten so advanced that the rough matters, but it doesn't matter as much. You can still get spin out of the rough. Now, when you get it down 3-4 inches, then you can, and you're trying to dig it out, and then bigger, stronger guys or not hitting in it is obviously going to be important and crucial when it comes to, the scores in the U.S. Open. But if I have an opportunity, and you even saw the U.S. Open where DeChambeau beat McIlroy, when at Pinehurst. Some of those shots that they had to hit, they're muscling it out if they miss the fairway by a couple of yards. So, they're trying to lay it back in, and, it became a chipping contest and putting contest more than it did a bomber contest. But the difference is that when DeChambeau hit it down there, 340, 350, and these other guys are hitting at 300, now I can still get on the green if I'm in that deep rough with a 7-iron or 8-iron or not, I can knock something up and chase it up there versus I can't get a 3-iron there. I have to lay up. Well, I'm forced to lay up. And with the new technology, like I said, Patrick said that it added that much to his 3-wood. He couldn't wait to get out there and use it. That day I'm watching the golf, and Jack Nicklaus was talking about the new technology, and Scheffler had just crushed a 3-wood, crushed it 300 yards. I mean, it's crazy how far they hit him. And Jack said, I used the same 3-wood for 23 years, from 1967 to whatever it was. And I love this club. I didn't change the grip hardly, it was my club. And then finally they talked me into trying the new stuff, and I changed it. But I just thought it was ironic how Patrick just did it. Well, the other thing that got me thinking about is with these guys on Live, who, with the technology and all these things. And look, Live, I like watching Live. It's fun. I've done some work with Live. But those guys who left for that crazy amount of money, I think Dustin Johnson was 175 million. I want to say Koepka was, somewhere 150 million. They got all this money. And
wasn't Rahm like $500 million? I mean,
it was a lot. I mean, they got a ton of money. But in the next 3 years, these guys' contracts start coming up, and Liv has already told them that they're not going to get that payday again. If you're those guys, and this is what I think anyway, if you're Koepka and Dustin Johnson and Rahm, I think Koepka's comes up after next year. I think him and Dustin are the first ones. I can't imagine they don't come back to the PGA. unless something happens before then that merges them, which there's a lot of talk about that happening, then it would be a different ballgame. But, I think they'll come back. They've got the payday. They've made all that money. They are, you hear people say how they enjoyed the PGA and being on the PGA more than they do live. So I think they'll come back.
Rahm got 300 million. Mickelson got 200 million. Koepka 130. Dustin Johnson 125, and DeChambeau 125 million.
Yeah. So when those contracts come up, they got paid already. So if there's not a merge between or something happens before then, I think you're going to see those guys leave live and come back. They're going to, you know what? I sacrificed 3-4 years off the PGA. I still got to play in the majors.
I don't know how much I don't know how much of a sacrifice that is.
Well, yeah. If you just look at from a golf respect standpoint, PGA is it.
Well, I think if you looked at the tradition, the history aspect of it, you might have given up 4 or 5 years of your career to go make the money and then maybe have an opportunity to come back. But
at still a pretty young age, I think they're brilliant.
I mean, Ron right now is in his prime, and he's playing as well as he ever has.
He started playing good again, which is great, because he struggled for a while. And listen, you talked about life-changing things. We talked about getting married, we talked about having kids. Well, also getting money. I mean, when you get paid $125 million, even though you were doing pretty good, but you might have been making $6 million or $8 million. When you get that lump sum given to you, whether you win or lose,
that's right.
That's a whole different ballgame.
And the reason being is because of we talked about it, I think, a couple of weeks ago with climbing the mountain.
Yeah.
Right. The hunger that you're chasing and you're fighting and you're struggling to get to the top. Once you get to the top, what happens? Right. It's a lot harder to stay on top,
no doubt,
than it is to, get up there a lot of times, because you're hungry, you're fighting, you're strong, you're scrapping, you're doing everything you can, to get there. And then, you're putting in the work, you're putting in the hours, you're putting in the effort, and you're getting better. Once you've arrived, how much better are you going to be trying to get? You're going to be worried about, what am I going to be doing next? With what car am I going to buy next? Where am I going to buy my next
What house am I going to get? Where am I going on vacation when this? Yeah.
So for these guys, I think the difference has been maybe for, they've had a little bit of a break, but even DeChambeau, he seems like he's gotten better because it's given him more confidence over there.
No doubt. And look, those guys can still play and they'll still be young when they come back. The other question will be when they want to come back. What do Big D's breaking stuff over here? Dylan, are you mad at Dylan?
He got mad that he would start 125.
Dylan, why is your shirt button?
I'm not even making $25.
Yeah, why's your shirt unbuttoned? No one can see. Why's your shirt? Now you're trying to mock me.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. I think those guys will come back, but then the interesting part is going to be, and this has already been a problem when they talk about merging, is if they let them back in the PGA. They took all that money and ran from the PGA. They went and competed against PGA. So the guys in the PGA, Rory, Tiger, these guys think that if they come back, they have to pay a price. Like we need to get some money like they got. So if Liv's going to come merge with us, we need to get some back pay that's what's kind of the sticky point. And I think that's valid.
They want reparations?
Basically they do. Now we'll see what happens with it. I think they're on a path to where there's something in the percentages of what they get for this or that. But again, that's above my pay grade. But we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But watching Scottie, I've gotten to the point now with golf, especially like I said, because of Tiger, I've got buddies that will get up at 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. to watch the first tee time of a tournament, regardless where the tournament is. I'm the guy that's more like, okay, I'm going to watch the afternoon sessions when I can get it in. But on the weekend, if I'm home, I have it on in the background. Sundays, especially on the majors, are a big deal. I like to cook out. I like to and watch them, where it used to not be that way. But I do enjoy it. And Scottie, to me, first of all, he's a likable dude.
Yeah, but here's what's funny. It seems like in sports, there always has to be a hero and there has to be a villain, right? And it seems like Bryson DeChambeau started off as the villain, and because of the success that Scottie's had, people get tired of it, and now he's becoming the villain, and DeChambeau is becoming the hero. They want change. They want new. I could give you a perfect example of this. Steph Curry. When Steph Curry first got in the NBA, nobody disliked him, right? Everybody loved him. They loved him.
After what he did in the NCAA tournament,
right?
Man,
everybody loved him, in fact.
No question.
And now that he's been on top and he's he's won, and he's they've done what they've done at Golden State, and he's a big part of that. And he's one of the best ever to do what he's doing. You're going to start seeing people and people already have started coming off of, their favoritism for him, and he's going to start becoming the villain.
Well, you
the
also
same
see
thing happened
people
with
say
Tiger. The same thing happened with a lot of these players.
Steph, I think still the majority of people love Steph, but I think the one thing that he does take heat for is a lot of the purists in particular think that he's the reason the NBA product now has become so bad because it's just everyone wants to shoot
Is
from
that
100
his
feet
fault?
out. Well, he was the first one to do it. And so just like Tiger got people interested in golf, they're saying Steph got people that were already interested in basketball thinking that shooting 3-pointers and half-court shots.
That's the way the game has changed.
Well, and Steph takes a lot of crap because they say he's the one that changed it, which is probably true. I mean, when you're a young kid and you see him, it's like Caitlin Clark. Listen, she gets so much hate, which in the WNBA, which I don't watch the WNBA.
Those are two different dynamics, though.
They are.
The hate that exists for her is different in that league than the hate that exists for Steph Curry.
No doubt.
In that league.
But my point, no doubt, and that's a whole different topic. But my point is that the way that Steph changed basketball, which he totally did, the way they play now, when you're shooting 53 pointers a game, that's Steph. When you go over to the WNBA with Caitlin, she's got the same thing that he did with basketball that Tiger had with golf. These young girls are now wanting to play in WNBA, and they want to shoot from the logo. They want to shoot from 3-pointers.
That's not because Caitlin Clark.
Oh, it is.
No,
100%.
No, it's not.
She's made more of
Caitlin Clark is doing that because of Steph Curry, because the game changed that
correct.
way.
But she was a unicorn. Not many girls looked at Steph Curry and said, I want to go do that. Because Caitlin's doing it now, a lot of young girls, she is their hero, and now they are mimicking that. So we're going to see that same thing happen. I'm not saying it's bad. I don't care about the WNBA. The only time I actually watch WNBA is if Caitlin Clark's playing.
There's a big difference between taking shots and making shots.
Oh, no doubt about it.
So just because people want to go out there and do what Caitlin Clark is doing or Steph Curry is doing, coaches aren't going to allow you just to jack up shots and shoot if you're missing and only making 25%, 30%.
Obviously, you got to be good. I'm just saying that the style and the things that these young kids practice now are that. Whereas when we played, you practice your free throws, you practice your layups, you practice your mid-range jumpers.
Crossovers.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't even a 3-point line for quite some time. So anyway, that Scottie doesn't have that where people are going, I want to be Scottie Scheffler. DeChambeau has that. They're going, I want to be DeChambeau. I want to hit the ball 500 yards.
DeChambeau has the talent. Scheffler has the consistency. Nobody wants to mimic consistency. That's boring.
Right.
They want when I hit the ball, they want you to go what? Wow. Right. Yeah. And that's what everybody's looking for.
That's why, because of what you just said.
Scottie doesn't have the wow factor.
He doesn't, but I think that is why he has a chance to go down as one of the best, because he doesn't have the wow factor. He doesn't get caught up in that stuff. He doesn't care. He's already married. He's got his kids. He doesn't care about the wow factor. He wants to win tournaments, and he is as competitive. I mean, dude, he is a competitor. There's no question about that. When you talk to these other golfers out there, he wants you down. He wants to wear you out.
The difference between Scottie, to me, and some of these other golfers is the way he thinks himself around the course. And he can hit those shots accordingly. The pressure is never an issue for him, regardless of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
He's won every tournament, every major, that exists. So it's just a matter of, when what he's going to do in those moments.
Well, he'll be the next. I think he'll be the next to get the Grand Slam, because I know Spieth needs one more.
Spieth needs one more,
and he's playing better. He did almost kill a guy yesterday, but Spieth is playing better. So we could see him do it, but I still think Scheffler will do it before Spieth
and Rory.
Well, Rory's already got it.
He just did.
Yeah, Rory just did it.
The Masters was his Grand Slam.
I think Scheffler will be the next one, even though Spieth only needs one, and I think Scheffler needs two, if I'm not mistaken. But I think he'll get those in the next 2 years. I just don't see anybody beating him.
But here's the thing: nobody's talking about Scheffler as being the greatest of all time.
They're kind of posing the question like I just did, like why are we? Remember when Spieth got hot? Remember you argued with Nathan, and you guys went at each other about Nathan thought that here's the next Tiger. He just went back to back Masters, whatever it was, and you were like, "Oh, give me a break. Let's give it."
He was as hot as any golfer in the world.
Yeah,
and guys go through streaks like that.
Yeah,
right. And this is a more sustainable streak for Scottie. It's not a streak. It's just he's talent. I feel like that him and Phil Mickelson are about the same golfer when they were in their prime. The difference for Scottie is that there's no Tiger, right? For Phil, it was always Tiger. Right. And he had a couple of other guys that were there as well.
You could say the same thing, I'm sure, about Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus. If Jack Nicklaus went there, Arnold probably would have won more tournaments. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that's a valid point. I think not having Rom and those guys there every week, will have a little asterisk probably next to it. And I think it's fair, but I think that he could win so many tournaments that at some point it won't matter. And people just go, dude, the guy's one of the best golfers we've
kids
seen.
In high school, let's just say it this way. Kids in high school aren't watching Scottie Scheffler and saying, gosh, I want to be like him. They're watching John Rahm, or they're watching Bryson DeChambeau and said, I want to be like that.
100%. I mean, and that's why in 10 years, we're going to see pretty much every golfer is able to hit it.
Well, they already are.
Yeah. I mean, you see these young kids.
The technology helps that.
Nuts.
And these kids go out there and they hit it 330, 340 on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's nuts.
The golf courses are becoming obsolete because of how far people are hitting it.
No doubt. A couple more things, then we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little Panthers OTAs. They just wrapped that up. And want to talk about a few things with that. I do want to mention that we've got NHL championship for the Stanley Cup is Wednesday night. Florida Panthers are at Edmonton. Edmonton's -130. Florida, to me, I know you and I both agree that we both think they're going to win it. They're just bigger, stronger, faster. Canes gave them a better game when they won game 4, I guess. Game 5, they were in it for a couple periods and then took it on the chin. And then the NBA, you got OKC in Indiana. I can't wait for that. I was going to say that's actually a series I'm excited about because it's two teams that have the same philosophy when it comes to being a team. You hear these players talking about how we care for each other, we fight for each other, we're all on the same page. And to me, and also just Indiana and Oklahoma City, when you see those two names, you just think of Jimmy Chitwood and that. And both these teams play basketball the way I like to watch basketball. I'm not saying people want to give SGA crap for getting too many drawing fouls, whatever you want to say. Halliburton was voted the most overrated guy in the NBA yet, and then all he's done in the playoffs is be part of what's carried that team. But I'm excited about it. But we're gonna take a break. Panthers OTAs. I'm also excited about that. I have not named any of the players Hall of Famers yet, or a no name that now I can't stop Googling trying to get his information. But we'll go through who has done well, what people have said that were at practices when they were allowed to, and hopefully get everybody excited about the Panthers right after this.
It's time to suit up. Here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome back to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout along with Frank Garcia, Big Dylan over there on the board, taking care of business. Hoping everybody's having a good Monday. Frank and I have kind of went down the rabbit hole of some baseball and some how kids are different these days than they used to be, and how certain guys handle pressure and don't. And speaking of pressure, Panthers just finished their first OTAs of the season. They had obviously the rookies that they just drafted in-house, the free agents they had, the rookie free agents, which was great. Their first time to get a look at seeing them on the field and how these guys act in the locker room and all those things. Everybody's eyes obviously first of all are on Ted McMillan, their first round pick, and according to everyone that was out there that got to watch the practices that they were allowed to watch, the word was that he is a much smoother route runner than they were giving him credit for. And then what everyone knew is that he catches everything. You might have saw they showed some videos of Bryce threw a couple bombs that McMillan brought in over the DBs. Again, no pads, we know that. So this is flag football, for I guess a lack of a better word. You talked about kind of last show you talked about OTAs and some of the differences, but McMillan evidently looked great. Xavier Legette, they interviewed him and how he worked a lot this offseason on catching the ball a lot more with his hands instead of his body, and he evidently looked. It's
amazing. You get to the NFL and you still have to tell guys that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I tell my 8-year-old son, use your hands, not your body. Use your hands, not your body.
Do you think it's because these guys, and Xavier Legette's a good example, are such great athletes and they're so much better than the competition in high school and even in college where Legette, was breaking 80 yards this and 100 yards this, and do you think it's because they just don't want to mess with them?
No, I think what happens, DJ, is that yes, they are great. They're so much better athletes than probably everybody at their level that they don't have to use their hands. I'm sure coaches still tell them use your hands, but when they go out there against the high school team they're playing or the college team they're playing, they can still use their body and get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to the NFL, guys are so good that if you use your body, it'll be an incomplete pass. So you're forced to do and use your hands.
Yeah.
It's funny how the NFL has a way of making you play to your weaknesses, not your strengths. If you don't work on your weaknesses, you'll never make it in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one thing I feel like for Leggett anyways, is that he has great arm length. He has great height. He has he has this separation that you're looking for, in a big time wide receiver. But if you're going to catch the ball with your body, you turn a 6'3" guy into a 5'11" guy.
Right. Exactly.
So, that's the same thing as having a 6'8" offensive lineman that plays with his arms, next to his body.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, why would you lose your value of being 6'8"?
Yep. Well,
so those are the things that he's going to have to continue to work on. But if he wants to be, take that next step, and it sounds like they're at least, in his ear, and hopefully he's starting to understand that that's going to be the difference.
Well, the wide receiver coach Rob Moore, who was a Pro Bowl in his own right with the Jets back in the day, they said he's really taken Leggett and McMillan under his wings. He's spending a lot of time with them. Leggett, they say, is a lot more comfortable at practice this year. He's laughing more. He's smiling more. We've seen him all over TV at the Kentucky Derby. He was famous. Everybody wanted to interview him.
My son was at his camp.
Yeah. And so, I think we're going to see, we're talking about McMillan because he's the shiny new toy and he's 6'4" and all these things that we're excited about. But I think Xavier Leggett, we're going to see a much better Leggett this year for a couple reasons. Number one, rookie seasons, a lot of guys struggle. Number two, he did have the wrist injury, and that's when he did seem to start dropping more balls. Number three, he's going to be more comfortable. He's working his butt off. And number four, he's probably thinking a little bit about, I was the number one receiver the year before. I was going to be their number one guy, and then they just drafted another guy. Like, I'm sure the competitive nature in him is going.
You hope so.
Yeah, I mean, and from what everybody says, it is. So, you hope
that these guys are going to make each other better.
100%.
Right. I'm going to have, it's like you and your buddy, when you're going in Little League, I'm going to hit 8 home runs. Well, if you hit 8, I'm going to hit 9.
Oh yeah. 100%.
If you hit 9, I'm going to hit 10.
Yep.
You're competing against that guy to make more touchdown catches, to have more receptions, to do those things, which is going to in turn, make you work harder in practice and then eventually in the game. And,
everyone says that he has. So I'm excited about that tandem. The receiver that's getting a lot of talk is Jimmy Horn Jr., the 6th round pick out of Colorado. He's very fast. He's explosive. He does have great hands. Size. He's 5'10", 180. So he's not the biggest dude in the world. But if you look at other players in the NFL that are having success that are his size with the explosiveness, there's many of them. Tank Dell with the Texans is one that comes to mind right off the bat. So there's a lot of excitement with him. We'll see. Again, there's no pads, but the route running and what he's been able to do in practice has gotten a lot of people excited. Turk Wharton, the defensive tackle that we signed from the Kansas City Chiefs, who had 8 sacks last year, big guy, in the middle, good run stopper, but did rush the passer well last year. I was talking to a couple people who were at camp, and then a couple articles that I've read that they're really excited about him, that having him in practice and seeing him live, he's a lot more explosive than they even thought he was. And again, young guy too, who everyone says great locker room guy. If you remember last year when the kid was reaching over for an autograph in the Panther Stadium and fell over, Wharton's the one that caught him. So, when he was with Kansas City. And then another guy that was our 5th round pick last year, Chow Smith-Wade, out of Oregon State. And he was having a really good year last year. He actually ended up starting at nickel, I think for a couple games before he got hurt, and he missed the last 4 or 5 games. He had a couple interceptions this week and OTAs, and they're excited about him, which is great because at corner, we know they need depth. They've got their 2 starters, but beyond that, they've got a bunch of guys that need to pan out. There's not a name there that you put your finger on right away and go, this is the guy. So hopefully he continues to improve. There's still talks, that Jalen Ramsey, the all-pro top 5 corner from the Dolphins, there's a lot of talk about the Panthers being interested in him. he's owed $24 million this year. So, you could probably get him for a 5th round draft choice, which is fine. It's just the money part of it. Panthers did clear up some cap when they cut Clowney. They could still easily redo Moton's contract to save a lot of money, although they've said they really don't want to do that. And you know what? I don't blame them, because next year, if you don't do a new deal with them, that's $31 million off the books right away. And now they have gotten themselves in a really nice spot from a cap standpoint moving forward, which, as you know, they were in salary cap hell for years. So they've now gotten out of that. So we'll see what they do. But those are the guys who are talked about. And the one guy that we both like, who is getting a lot of talk and a lot of hype and a lot of praise, was Mitchell Evans, the tight end out of Notre Dame. Tommy Tremble, another tight end out of Notre Dame, who's been on the Panthers for a few years, just signed that new contract. He had back surgery. I can relate, brother. I hope yours went a lot better than my 3 have. But so he wasn't participating at all. So Mitchell got a lot of reps. And because he got a lot of reps, he made a lot of plays and he caught a lot of balls. And everyone starts going, we got to steal. And if you read any draft analysts about the Panthers, and you and I had several on, you couldn't read one thing about the Panthers draft. Most of it obviously was focused on McMillan, but you couldn't read anything that didn't say that Mitchell Evans could be a steal and could actually be the starter very soon here with the Carolina Panthers. And he did nothing to hurt that reputation in OTAs.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see, how these guys evolve as the season goes. But ultimately, it's going to come down to a couple of things. Can the quarterback distribute the ball to all these players? There's only one football.
Yep.
You have a lot of playmakers, which is good.
Yep.
Is the coordinator going to understand his personnel so that he puts them in positions to succeed? Right? This is this guy's strengths, and this is the routes he runs well. So let's isolate him against a weaker player on the defense and see if we can get a matchup there. This is what this guy does well. Let's get a matchup here and coordinate all that so that when Bryce comes back and drops back in the pocket, he's able to, read and understand, like he's the guy calling the plays. So all the things that they're doing right now, it's very isolated, right? You're going to run this route. You got a 1-on-1 against that player. We're going to throw the ball 1, 2, 3. It's all about, the teaching of this. But when all the moving pieces start taking place and the pads come on and the firecrackers start going off and all the bullets start flying, who's going to be the guys that step up? You're only going to be able to evaluate based on what you see right now. And that's a good thing, I guess, because, they're going out there and they're still having to showcase and make plays, and they're always being watched. But the defense right now isn't really giving the effort that they're going to give in a regular season.
And Derek Brown didn't participate.
Well, not just that, is that even the competition of a ball in the air, the defense is going to be in position. They're not going to go up and challenge. So who can catch the ball through fighting hands? Who can go over the top and treetop somebody? Who can get in and out of a break when that defensive guy is holding you and not allowing you to do those things? And that might be the challenges some of these players have. The quick, fast receiver, if I go play press coverage on him man to man or lock him up and I jam you, what now what?
Yeah.
How do you get off of that?
Yeah. And then,
right? Is a coordinator going to say, okay, well, this guy's not very good at that. Now let's put him in motion so they can't do those things. And those are all the moving pieces that take place.
Or when they see that, they're using OTAs in the offseason to work on that. Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what they're figuring out, these players still.
Yep, exactly.
This coordinator has only been with them a short period. Great, you saw him on film and what he did at Oregon State or what he did at Texas or what he did at whatever college he was at. But now I have eyes on him, and now he's going against NFL caliber players. And now let's see what he's able to do against these guys in our system.
Canales calls the plays. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's 100% what he's looking at. On the defensive side, Nick Scorton, our 2nd round pick, is getting a lot of pub. A lot of people think this dude is going to be a steal. I thought
he's my favorite player in the draft.
Yeah, when they got him in the 2nd round,
and for the Panthers draft.
Yeah, when they got him, and then Princely in the 3rd round, the other defensive end out of Ole Miss. I think Evero did a smart thing. He put both those young studs. Hopefully, they'll be young studs with Wanham and I think the other veteran was Johnson. He put them with them in the meetings and everywhere. So they're with these veteran defensive ends all the time, and I think that's very smart of him to do. Evero, our defensive coordinator, who's been very successful in the NFL. Last year, he had the worst defense in the league. You can't give him that. I don't give that to him. I think he had, you can't make chicken salad out of whatever.
You have to give that to him. That was what his product was.
No doubt. But my point, though, is I put a lot more of that on the tools in his toolbox last year. This year, I think he's got a lot better tools. And I don't think they're done yet.
So is it the player or is it the coach?
Well, I think a coach, you can't get a coach has to have players. I mean, and he didn't have players. So this year, I think he's got players. We'll see. He's been a top 5 coordinator, top 10 his whole career.
With who?
The Broncos and the Panthers.
With players.
With players at some point. So I think he's got players this year. Last year, he didn't.
We'll see.
And we'll see. But I do think that, he's also always been a little stingy on playing young guys. He's one of those coaches who prefers veterans who know where to be, the spots to be in. So now he's going to have to, because with this defense,
that's a big part of maybe why they didn't take the kid out of Georgia, because they felt like in order for him to have success that they would have to build the defense around him as a rookie. And I agree with you. Evero was a guy, I feel like that likes to lean on veterans a little bit more. He likes the consistency. He likes to know that you're going to show up each and every week. You're going to be in the right position when your number, when a play is called. And, that's the thing about the NFL. So, we talk about the defensive or the offensive side. If one guy makes a mistake, it looks like the whole entire offense is terrible. Mm-hmm. If one guy makes a play on defense, looks like the entire defense is great.
Yeah.
If it feels like he's a guy that wants these guys to play within their scheme, wants to play their positions, wants to play gap sound football, wants to get to the football, wants to be aggressive, wants to fly around. But, if one guy is out of position in the NFL with a running back, for example, if you have a good running back, he's going to find that weakness and exploit it. Right. And that's where the big yards, the big plays happen. So, getting guys in position, coordinating them to be in the right place, especially these rookies. This is what your assignment is. This is what the defense dictates on this. This is what your responsibility means, that you're going to force this back in. You're not here to make the play.
Yeah.
You're here to do your job and allow the rest of the defense to make the play.
Yeah, I agree. So, OTAs, there's no pads. Those are the stories that stick out. Hunter Renfrow, trying to make a comeback, look good. So, we'll see that the receiver depth is as deep as it's been in a long time. So I'm glad about that. Before we go, if you are a Panther fan, and the Panthers did this last year and it was fantastic. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It comes out later today if you want to watch it, but it's called Blueprint. And you can go to the Panthers website or on social media and you'll see the links for it. But it's all the behind the scenes stuff. And so in the first episode, the teaser, it's when they're on the clock and there's McMillan's their guy right away. They know that's their guy. But the Rams, who were drafting, 26 or whatever, wanted to move up to take McMillan. And so in the teaser, whatever we told the Rams it would take to move out, which in the teaser it doesn't tell you, and I'm guessing it will tonight. I don't know. The Panthers are waiting and they're waiting, and it's getting close to them being on the clock. And, Dan Morgan's like, look, if they take that deal, how do we not do it? If they take that, we'll be shocked. So it must have been asking for a lot. But if they don't take it right away, we're taking McMillan. So they knew their guy. And then St. Louis called, or LA called the Rams and said, we can't do that. And then boom, we're taking McMillan. So the behind the scenes stuff, watching that.
It's like the hard knocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the Panthers do a great job with it. So you can check that out online. I know I'll be watching it, this week for sure. But the first episode comes out tonight. So thank you guys for joining us. We were all over the place today, which I think was fun. A lot of those things I know that some of you guys talk about, at the bar or your family gathering or at work around the water cooler, if they even have water coolers anymore, who knows? I don't know. But
I can't wait to watch the NBA playoffs. I know that for sure.
Well, that's gonna be great. That's our start.
I can tell you this. I haven't said that in probably 10 years.
Yeah, I'm with you. This is the kind of basketball that I enjoy.
I was watching with my kids just real quick before we go. I know you're signing off, but they're watching the game. They go, Dad, why are these guys playing so hard? What look at how hard they're playing.
Yep.
And I go, that's the way playoff basketball has always been played. They're used to watching regular season and going to the Hornets and seeing them play. And they're like, these guys are actually trying.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes it look, it's incredible because to see their faces light up like, wow, that's a different game than what I'm used to seeing.
Yeah.
It was pretty impressive for them to know.
Where for the kids, it's something new for them to see and they like it. For you and I, it's refreshing because that's what we grew up on.
That's
and it's been gone. So, yeah, I'm excited about that as well as the NHL Stanley Cup. You know, Florida and Edmonton should be a good matchup. Both are good teams. Both play good defense. Both have goalies that are hot right now. So that'll be good. So we'll talk about that Friday and a lot more. I think we'll have a special guest lined up Friday that'll join us. So have a good rest of the week. We'll see you then.